it's too late. Most say that they real, but they too fake. Most act minor, but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real, but they too fake. Most act minor, but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. Welcome to Scarborough. Youths want cash without tango. Candle magic got me calling on Shango. When I strike, I'm coming from lightning angles. Wet up in your ride like dangles. Know your place. When me and the God step in the place, devils get step in their face. No matter your race, watch your speech. We defend peace with justice. Love for the God make you shit like mustard or run like custard. Too slow, so you know how it go. Send him to Assad. I'm not the one to judge you, bro, or judge you, sis. Humanity written from hip to hip, but you're shaking them and not getting your womb equipped. Degrading yourself for women's rights, not saving yourself. Turning a dyke, but won't spiritually raise yourself. Waste of sperm, can't even wait to perm. Getting viruses and symptoms, you're thinking it's germs. Making so many mistakes, from none you learn. Seeing your future as the fucking cauldron turn. Ease the burn of your young son's death. Blaming the influence, but never blaming yourself. Drive a shot, but never a crooked cop. Crip shot, but never a racist cop. Racism doesn't exist, so stop. Rex 84, King Alfred got him on the block for chopping. Nigga Mortus, abuse ain't stopping. Guns on your shirts, but your pistol's not cocking. Popping and locking, guns jammed for 10 you're locked in. Or eternal sleep in a closed coffin. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real, but they too fake. Most act minor, but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real, but they too fake. Most act minor, but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. They got you stuck on some fakeness. We revealed this, you heard of us. Official lower self-murderers. These Mars come equipped for warfare. Tam or Kufi. These Sufi are my corp of Mufti. For all those who wanna profile and pose. See a nigga dressing or a fag made his clothes. You all alone in that gear, cousin. Gangsta hardcore thugs, you just frontin'. Cops keep them fake crews running like they supposed to. Rich like Scarface, you never come close to. I can see it, eyes tell no lies. Assalamu alaikum, selling white sugar in those bean pies. Giving dollars to Doc's lawyer who took the bar. And between you and your leader, he's being a bar. Some say I'm rude, blame Brother Dawood or Azariah. Pastor Beverly, the Messiah. David Walker, action not a talker. Sleepwalker, wake up, you're just daydreaming. Dirty Moors don't want to be God and stay heathen. I can't believe what I'm seeing. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real, but they too fake. Most act minor, but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real, but they too fake. Most act minor, but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. Rappers think they hot, niggas warm like Luke. Oops, call them dirty Moors is what we taught to do. Not the Klansmen, burning some cross for you. If he's got a speechwriter, who's the boss to you? Voting for Obama, I see he's off like you. I walk, don't need a boxed up Porsche like you. Loving the Fiat, dirty Moors thugging for Fiat. Grabbing old ladies' purses, they mugging for Fiat. Some taking, some big, for Fiat they drugging. Fiat is backed by nothing, fam, I'm not bluffing. Players hands on their ass like it's turkey they stuffing. Doing it for your boys, treat your girl like nothing. Matriarch rules, patriarch fools. I'm seeing gods act like men, thinking like mules. Square my rough edges without mason tools. I never took an oath, so I'm revealing mason rules. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real, but they too fake. Most act minor, but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real, but they too fake. Most act minor, but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. Produced by D&D, the Gotas, Iron Sheik, CMP. Iron Sheik.
The street is my world. I don't pretend to go uptown and be anything fancy. I can, but I find more real in the world that I'm in than I do the tinsel. And the real world is the one I have to deal with every day. You know, believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of it left.
Let the bass kick. Playtime been over since y'all dropped the ball. Bound to the continent, there's no asylum for y'all. Pushing the black Asiatic game with Fort L and Pool Bay. Before NOI, I rep draw L all day. How many fakes proclaim to be the reincarnation and claim to be the true head of the Moorish nation? No mention of Billy Ill, but I read his letters. Dirty Moors mad cause they thought they dead as letters. Many were there when decisions were handed down. Now they claim that Lil was not ordained, not commissioned, not called or appointed. With divine plans for ages, but Dirty Moors making changes, working with FBI during infiltrations. In a pheasant alleys, giving bogey smoke inhalations. And secret wars are made, heads are made in public mentions. Don't believe, get the minutes of the first convention. Kirkman and Lomax Bay got called out as villains against the Prophet Soden and L. Paul Gibbons. Thousands of Moorish Americans followed those leaders that killed the prophet and made Moors parrots, not readers. They don't study, brains hollow. To crush the truth, plant dissension in the ones that follow. Robbed the treasury, felt like they hit the lotto. Took advantage of the faithful Moors in their times of sorrow. Moments still critical, 100 years later, the message. Stick to the principles in your actions, be progressive. Don't sell your soul for a title, take your membership role. Watch out for grand cheeks pushing you in a censorship hole. The sellout was great, now they comfy and won't get the hell out. Active Moors come around, they get clumsy. Not humbly, but act grumpy and jumpy. Active Moors see them touchy and think it's lovely. With faces ugly, I push back so don't shove me. If not for love, it would be just as Dirty Moors get from me. Hitting all reincarnates and writs of discovery and demanding the treasury recovery and law for money. Wearing affairs don't make you a Moorish adept. Dirty Moorish heads are Boy Scouts and cadets. Working for FBI inspectors, slaves for gadgets. Claiming they got pulled, but they really dead magnets. Running a fraud that's done cause new Moors are here. One for all for one profit like musketeers. Babe, not Tampa or Buccaneers. I strike nerves like hardball strings on those puppeteers. Pushing misconceptions as features and calling it facts. Swinging my scimitar, tongue not a fireman's axe. Quick to call me out as dirty, say I violate acts. If you don't nationalize, know that I annihilate blacks. Nailing through their palms and incepts on beams of wood. Burn crosses on black lawns in my Moorish hood. Black Klansmen like movie from 1960s. White power, not supremacy like Clayton Bixby. Now I run through illusions, battling my arch nemesis, misconfusion. She's been trying to keep me out of course, facing losses, calling all her negative forces. 99 years past, Drew Ali said 50 would pass, and you wouldn't know about me, or even know what I brought for you. NOI and UNIA knew about him too. Most thought that they could bury the movement, be in charge, passive and abuse it. But Drew said new Moors would come with eyes open, seeing and knowing, far from hoping. Far from belief in faith, master fruition. Study the laws of nature, activate intuition. One day our wheels of industry will stop, and when it starts again, Moors will be on top. Drew Ali blessed with latent power. Warned you, get out the way or be ground to powder. Drew Ali didn't kill you fast, but he brought you your title and estate fast. Confusion continues to confuse, no remembrance of Maghrib al-Aqsa by Moorish descendants. Now I run through illusions, battling my arch nemesis, misconfusion. She's been trying to keep me out of course, facing losses, calling all her negative forces.
You sat down and you attacked the master teacher because you thought you heard something that you didn't hear. That's the first violation. You don't come in. First of all, you come in and you act like you come in peace, but you don't. You got an agenda.
Moors are men upright, independent and fearless. Dogmatized dirty Moors, tongues cut out left earless, cause they never listen. Dirty Moors, keep up your slander. Wu-Tang torture in your ass, hot hangers. Kidnappers, dirty Moor, torture him like Saw. 3D, 0.5.
You sat down and you attacked the master teacher because you thought you heard something that you didn't hear. That's the first violation. You don't come in. First of all, you come in and you act like you come in peace, but you don't. You got an agenda.
Moors are men upright, independent and fearless. Dogmatized, dirty Moors, tongues cut out, left earless, cause they never listen. Dirty Moors, keep up your slander. Wu-Tang torture in your ass, hot hangers. Kidnappers, dirty Moor, torture him like Saw. 3D, 0.5 or 1 through 4. Or get it like 5 or 6 with a fez on jigsaw. Leather face in a turban, rip dirty Moors lips off. Disrespecting the mother Raz Mariah Bay. Wrap him up like double crochet, the barbed wire way. Throw him off a bridge or feed him to the piranhas. Yellow journalists more spread nothing but propaganda. Idi Amin Bay, treat the temple like Uganda. Dirty Moors like foreigners, crush the dust like ganja. Not worthy of being Moors, we call them dirty Nehesus. Solomon Seal spell command 72 demons to get you.
This is what the temple guys actually say. That Canaanland is not a part of North America. Canaanland is bigger. Yo, it's ignorant, man. I mean, come on, you're talking about the same land, man. Canaanland is actually bigger than the landmass they know is the corporate United States. Almost twice as big. And if they had any sense, they could just go to Google and they can type in North America and find out North America goes all the way up to green. But they're ignorant. They don't want to do that. They just dealing off emotions.
You might hear hoarse voices, see frog faces, and hoops for feet. Demons we run with, spit fire with gold wolf teeth. Keep playing, forget back teeth. New Moors are an issue, get Ginsu. Maybe a dream visit from Ishnu, a nightmare to never end and always continue. Cold as an igloo, dealing with my trust issues through vigilance. Active Moors are militants, SPLC dirty Moors call that sovereign citizen. Lying for views, they notice all the empty pews. Benz need gas and fixing, but not enough dues. Pigpen Bays sell you out for peanuts, claiming that we nuts for teaching birthright street level, keeping it beat nuts.
To any members of the MFTA that's out there listening to what I'm saying, please get it through your head. I don't have a problem with the MFTA. I got issues with
the cases Lamar, stay surrounded by feathers. Dirt is guilty of fraud and duly scrutinize their ledgers. Getting proclamations from Morocco, disrespect us. Corporate city only recognize people's court jesters. Handing their back, Moorish puppets and minions. Never get the human rights recognition like Moors near Virginia. Commonwealth, for active Moors knowledge, the Commonwealth. Dirties claim more, but really on the straw man help. Authenticating a birth certificate, that's not significant. Civil little more two status syndicates. In more faith, watch them two more status Indians claiming Turtle Island are lying so intricate.
long days and long nights. But this message needed to be heard.
There's a lot of Moors. So, Moor, you're watching the thing right now?
The live chat?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Because this one you might have to see.
Oh.
That I'm about to play right now.
All right.
So all the people who don't want to be Moors, you don't want to be Moors. I'm trying to tell you that you're Moors, you don't want to be Moors. Fine. If you don't want to be Moors, then people are going to take your stuff because you're a dumbass. If you don't want to be Moors, you stay over there and don't be Moors. We're going to give honors to these white supremacists here that play minstrel show and dress up in blackface to be racist against Negroes. We're gonna ride with these ones. Whatever you claim that you're repping, FOH with whatever you're repping. If you're not acknowledging, assisting, trying to help, proclaiming, declaring that you're more. If you don't want to be more, cool. Don't be. But all that white man and all that BS is a myth because everybody wants to be Moors. Damn, Anwar Madrid told us we are all Moors.
Simple.
Real simple. We are all Moors. Even if the idea is, well, they're not a real human and they have no place on the earth and whatever like that, and they came out of a test tube and all of that stuff, well, the lab that they got created in was our lab. So they're still Moors. They might be amalgamated. They might be synthetic Moors. But they're Moors. Just like how dirty Moors are Moors, they're not niggers. Even dirty Moors got a status. We call them niggers, but they're not supposed to be called niggers. They're supposed to be called dirty Moors to get the point that everybody's Moors, even the dirty people know what's up. Now again, the people who aren't Moors, oh my gosh, the whole world is racist. Look at what is going on here. White supremacy has taken over because all these Europeans are in blackface. They're not looking at the fact that they're in blackface to give out gifts to children at a parade. They're not gonna go there. They're just gonna go into their black BS that there's some type of white man that has this supremacy called white, and he's putting it on black guys. And that's how they live. In a myth that some white guy has some white supremacy that's attacking them. If they're white supremacy so white, why all these guys dress up like Negroes? Why are they dressing up like a minstrel show if they're about their stuff? If they're about white superiority, how come they don't stay what they are? Or maybe it's the people who are looking at it that have it twisted and don't want to realize, like what Anwar Madrid said, we are all Moors. You play around if you want to, but obviously, you know, you're only going to hear Moors talk about Anwar Madrid's book, We Are All Moors. You're not going to hear the black guys try to convince you that we are all Moors, because they think that what's going on right here are these Europeans making a mockery of a black guy by putting black ink, paint, spray paint, whatever on them to look black, red lips and all of that stuff, big ass red lips, put a fez on them, not just one of them, put a fez on all of them. And just like Moore said in the chat, this is not Birth of a Nation. This is 2018. These people don't give a F about your black whatever. Get the hell out of here. They're blackface in your face right now. You're doing nothing but complaining and marching and picketing like some punks. If they're so racist and they're going to go as far as filling up all the stairs or whatever like that with people, everybody's giving the good clear throat, and spit and woogie in your face, black guy. Every European.
Yep.
Big one, the yellow one, the one with all the lumps in it, right in your face. Pooh! And you're standing there. And why could they do that? Why could they just spit in your face like that? Because you have no honor. And nobody respects people that have no honor. No one respects people with no honor. These people are being Moors because your dumbass wants to be Negro, black, colored, and everything else that you fake that you are. You don't want to be that? All right, well then they're going to be you. They're going to be you then, since you don't want to be yourself. Blackface was a ritual to these people. Blackface was a ritual to these people. They're not doing that because of some race crap. They're doing that so they can walk in the shoes of the Moors. Because you become what you think you are. You think you're a dumb nigger? Then guaranteed you'll be nothing. You think you're a Moor? You'll go to school to be bored. Getting hundreds. So there's a big difference in being Negro, black, colored, and all the crap, all the fake stuff that people make up. We could even scratch out Negro, black, colored now. We could say Hebrew Israelite, Kemetic, and whatever else, whoever else out there, black Muslim. Scratch out Negro, black, colored on all the divine constitution and all that stuff, and put some modern stuff in there so people can get the point. They're playing around. You think these people are just doing this because they're bored? They're just bored, so they're just doing this. All these people, remember, we didn't even get up the stairs and down there to see if there's anybody back there. And then behind the camera people, and then to the left and right. You don't even know. All we get is what we see on the screen. We don't know how many are really there. Right?
As well, Gracie.
Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Real quick. Like, you know, you don't put that much time and effort into something planning for it to be racist, quote unquote racist. Like, oh, we doing this to be evil or something like that. They had to get together, plan that, order all of that material. Like, they spent time and effort and notes on that. They didn't just, oh, we're gonna clown, we're gonna get them. No. That's not what that is. That's too much effort to try to make a point. You don't just do that. You don't just do that to try to make a mockery or something. And we already know that we was their God. They know that. They know that. We was their gods. Those Greek statues that they show now, all of those was dark-skinned people. They put the dark face here now for the ritual, because like the Grand Chief said, because you are what you think, and they think they us. That's a crazy picture right there, Grand Chief.
Crazy.
That's
because you can't say that they're not being you. So if we look at them And we're going with the mindset of our people. They're basically telling you, based on everybody wearing fezzes, that black people are Moors. If you're gonna say he looks like his shirt, so he's black, okay. Black people are Moors.
Yeah.
And Drawley came to tell you that European is gonna tell you the truth. Yeah, and Noble Drawley prophesies that Moors gonna see sea of fezzes. You didn't say who was gonna be whatever. You just let you know. You're gonna see stuff. Which is supposed to validate or verify to you that, you know, the time has come for Moors to be in their own. Now check what's going on here. They smashed every paradigm with this thing that they were doing. Right, so the presence, not ENTS, ENCE, the presence of the Moors was knowledge. Because once you're around Moors, or once Moors are around, you're guaranteed to have something. Why? Because Moors been industrious. And everybody always wanted to get it from the Moors. So the only people that you could get it from is the Moors. The only people. If you wanted it, you're going to go to the dark-skinned people to get it.
Yeah.
People doing their... It's not just yesterday. Every year. For centuries, they've been doing this. Giving honor to these people who they know wear red fezzes and stuff like that and are dark as midnight. All you see is eyes when they're coming, unless they smile at you and all that. The world is aware. And as much as we put out, like yesterday proved, we know it's not falling on deaf ears. We know the work that we're doing is doing something. We're not Negro people who have nothing to show or whatever. Because how has this changed somebody personally is what matters. For them to evolve and be industrious as Moors are supposed to be. In whatever way that is for them. But do your part. Because everybody has a part to play. Everybody is a part of this machine. You know, and some people are stagnant parts that, you know, once you're screwed in, that's it. You know, you done your part. And there's certain parts that, you know, you can't stop working. And that's where we are. That's our duty in this machine called our people. The Moors are the ones that keep it going. Because all Moors are active, not passive. You know, we got taught that. People got to stop falling for the myth. You know, white man coming to do anything to you. You better start getting up on game. Stop listening to these fake leaders. Then the people who should be honoring, you're not honoring them. The supreme honors to the fakers from people. Supreme honors to the guys who could sell you a package and get you some illusion. And up to now, everybody who bought a package, they can't even show that they got something yet. But we know Moors who exercise their right and they get remedy. Anytime anybody else get a remedy, when they get a lawyer, which means you didn't get any remedy, shut the hell up. All that power went to them. And they got your finance, and they got your time. The illusion of white supremacy. Remember, everybody, in order to have a people dumbed down to the point where they don't want their own stuff, even when the world is showing them that it's theirs, you have to have inside people. Like we say all the time, if we were on some plantation or whatever, there's no way that the people who were before me didn't have the mindset of let's just rush this place and take over this plantation. When we know all they have is 5 guns and 20 bullets. You could go in the bushes and make a slingshot and kill people with stones. You sitting there talking about pick some cotton for some European, and then now you're complaining about they owe you something or whatever. When all that is part of the white supremacy illusion. You give certain people an inferiority complex and then make other people have a superiority complex, and then the inferiority complex individual really thinks that that's a reality. That the individual who is in the lesser of numbers is superior. You ever notice all these other places? When 1 million people go in the streets, the government stops playing their little BS and they give the people what they want. You know, shutting down government and talking about, oh, we can do this for years or whatever. You better give me wall and all that stuff. What are you talking about? The people said no wall, and then you're talking about the people are the government and stuff shut down. How stuff shut down if the people are the government, according to him?
Right.
But then he's trying to tell them about a wall that the people said we don't want. They voted on it. What do you mean? So obviously, you know, it's buy time again. Once again, buy time time. Keep the Negroes sleep a little bit longer so we can last a little bit longer. Just figure out what we got to, then we'll open back up for business, and you know, we can go for another 10 years. Because these people love not being Moors. They love not being Moors. And they find every way to try to have you think that we're not.
That's right. That's right. That's why they claim that Hannibal was a Moor. That's why I showed you Hannibal. Because I showed you the glyphs. I'm a symbolist. The glyphs that his wife used were from Kemet. But then they'll tell you when you read The Stolen Legacy, that Graham said in there that they are the custodians of the Egyptian religion. You'll hear them say that. I always say to them, if you're the custodians, why do you call on the name of Allah?
Right, so we'll put that one out there. The custodian ancient mystery systems that came out of ancient Egypt. He's talking about how is it that we are custodians of Egyptian stuff, but we're talking about Allah. Now, for one better, we'll ask the question, why is Pharaoh Khufu wearing a fez in Egypt? If the fez is Islamic and Moorish, then how come that's in ancient Egypt? Since you want to talk crazy as if everything isn't from one source. Again, playing their little game. Now they're playing the religion supremacy game. Like some religion is superior to the religion of nature. There's nothing. If it's not in harmony with nature, it's probably not in tune with true religion. But again, we ask the question. The Moors are the custodians of the ancient mystery systems of ancient Egypt, but they teach Allah. Well, the Pharaoh of ancient Egypt is wearing a fez. What? How can you never question Khufu about why he's wearing a fez in ancient Egypt, which should have nothing to do with Moors because fezzes come from Moors? But this is the part of not knowing your history. Not knowing that the more you study correctly, the more you see yourself. The more you study incorrectly, you're always fighting to find yourself, and you never do. Because none of these people who say that they are in the mindset of some ancient Egyptian practice is over there. They're in America. This is not land of the Egyptian, whatever. What the hell are you doing over here with practicing those stuff? Go back to where you're supposed to be at. Like we told the dude yesterday, we know Moors were on this side. So over here has to be Morocco. It's the only other, I mean, what else is it going to be over here if there's Moors here? So acknowledge that fezzes isn't some modern thing that we just came up with. Brimless headwear is ancient. Brimless headwear is ancient.
Did you adapt that, God? If you're the custodians? Because if you're the custodians of Egyptian religion, I'm supposed to be coming to you for hieroglyphic lessons. I'm breaking down the mega. What?
There's a lot more.
Great Sheik, I wanted to because you was talking about you showed the brother with the fez in Egypt, and they want to know why Moors talk about Allah but say they talk about they got the knowledge from Egypt. Now we done said this, and you said it a million times too. Like we said, we're Sufi, and then I mentioned before, if they just type in Google, but they not, because they don't study. If you just type in Google ancient Egyptian Sufism, it'll all pop up. Now there's an article, right, by Hazar Enyat Khan, right, about Sufism. Now, just the first sentence, right? It says Sufism originated from the ancient school of Egyptian mysteries, a school which existed even before Abraham, the father of the three great religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Those who know Sufism from a superficial writings and sometimes from translation of the Arabic or Persian literature are appointed to think that Sufism is the mystical side of Islam. In reality, it is not true. Sufism existed before Muhammad, before Jesus Christ, and before Abraham. It is true that the mystics in the world of Islam are called Sufis, but that does not mean that Sufi means the mystics of Islam. For instance, the green color and the national color of the Irish. But that does not mean that everybody who dresses in the green is from Ireland. The color existed even before people inhabited Ireland. It says a background of Sufism. And then it gives the definition of Sufi. Sufi is derived from the Arabic word safa or saf, which literally means pure, i.e., pure from distinctions and differences. In the Greek, the word means wise. Sufism cannot be deism, for the Sufi does not consider God as an entity separate from oneself. And then it continues on, giving the origin of it and everything. But it tells you, first line, Sufism originated from the ancient school of Egyptian mysteries. So when they talk about why do Moors say Allah, but like we say, we Sufi. And Sufism originated before all of that. Jesus, Muhammad, and the Islam they think of now. That was just a quick type it into Google and it pop right up. But they don't study, Grand Sheik. They don't study.
No, you know they don't. You know they don't.
But instead, when you see me, you go, Islam. Why? Because we go to the British Museum and we will see this there. The Battle of what? Adwa, 1896. What was that battle? I don't have to go into the history of the Moors. A picture speaks 1,000 words. Let me show you the picture. He used the painting of the Moors, and his voice will start dropping a little level because he knows I'm talking about this dimension. Now you can clearly see the Moors here in their red hats. Can you see? Yes. As you can see them here. You can see them here. Can you see? Yeah. These are the Ethiopians. This would be me, all of us here would probably be on this side.
There's a lot more. You have something before you start?
No, go ahead. Cause it takes a while for my computer.
Yeah.
You know, so like I'm seeing the pictures now. But
Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
No worries. Portrait of a priest in a monastery, Ethiopia. It doesn't have to be red, but once it's brimless, that's fezzes up. Emperor of Ethiopia wearing a fez. Does that mean he was working on the side with Mussolini because he's wearing a fez? Because that's a fez. It even has the little back cape, like the same sellouts that wore fezzes for the British, the African rifles. They had the little neck flap stuff too. But you'll never disrespect the emperor. You'll never call him out of his name. Talk about he's not a Moor and all of that. When he has fezzes up. But you're going to show British Museum pictures? That's your reference point? British Museum. We're showing you the emperor right here of that place that you're talking about, that war you're talking about. Direct relative of the war. Fezzes up. No, that's not a fez? Okay.
He got his turban underneath his fez.
What is this? Is this on a fez? Do it straw. Right. Traditional hats. Oh, traditional? If this is traditional, then what are you talking about? Some war and some British bringing fezzes to Ethiopia means that that's Moors. This is traditional. If this looks like that, wouldn't that mean that these guys are Moors too? They can try, and they always do. But don't fall for the BS. The fez is extremely significant. In whatever shape, size, color, whatever, however it's made, whatever the materials used. Fez makes a statement, says something. That's Ethiopia. These don't look like pale Arabs. These definitely don't look like some pale Arabs.
That's not pale Arab. Not at all.
They look like they work for some British or whatever to you. And this is actually a picture of people. People are showing you drawings talking about this is how it went down. And keep in mind too, Victor Marchetti and John D. Marks. Victor Marchetti, Marchetti, and John D. Marks, the CIA and the Cult of Intelligence. The CIA and the Cult of Intelligence. So you can see the divide and conquer schemes that's been used throughout history, like take things from other people's culture and have other people use those things in a derogatory manner to degrade that thing, in either to get the people to give up that thing in their culture, or as a last slap in the face after some type of defeat. Drag their culture through the mud, even though they already beat them. Which is the same thing that Jose Pimenta Bay was bringing up in his book about why go, if you already conquered us, why say we're not Moors? Like, why not just leave us as Moors but conquered? Why did you have to go further into having all these different brand names for us? No other race has that. They are who they are. They got conquered as of that, and then that's it. With us, we are all this different stuff after we got conquered. Why go through all that? There must be some type of importance in that word. There must be some type of frequency of more that is a threat. And it's a threat to the mass ignorance. Because once you become a Moor, now you're responsible for everything that you do. You better watch what you do. Now that you're declared and proclaimed, and you have 5 locations of the whatever, better not be nigger. Because when we say people are trying to get you away from your birthright by telling you fictions about things Moors tell you, like we said, with the Moro mother, that's European psychology. Your Eurocentric thinking is your problem. Why they'll never get it. Now, these are the priests of Ethiopia. If they got fezzes up, what do you mean using a picture in the British Museum as an example that Moors and fezzes are something that works with the European, and so if you wear that, that's incompetent thinking. Because clearly there's no connection to real world history. They have the illusion history that there's Kemet and it means black, and Egyptian is only a Greek thing, and have their self lost. Mad at Christianity, and when there's Ethiopians who are Christian, what are you talking about? They don't worship no European Jesus. But they got a cross. They go, yeah, I know European on the wall. We don't talk about them, because then that gives up the stuff that, hey, even they got feathers on. No, they have feathers. And then you go check the Jewish whatever, and then the Orthodox. Jews, they got fezzes on, and then they're Europeans, but then the Spanish are gonna dress up, and then they're gonna pretend that there be wars in order to do some ritual of, you know, giving back to them, so they don't get their karmic debt because they already know what's coming down the pike. So hey, let's go pretend like we do something. At least put it in the energy that, hey, we thought about being kind or whatever like that, but we're gonna keep all our stuff that we got from what we got from our foreparents who raped and pillaged you, instead of them giving up everything. But they're not making a move until you realize what's up and stop playing around. Senegal. Think they're just wearing fezzes because some European whatever? Everyone's on it. Everyone's on it. Peace more. You got anything there?
You did murder inspiration. But you showed the emperor with the fez on. It's already over. That's a fez. They know that's a fez.
They better know it's a fez.
There's plenty of pictures.
Too many. Too many. It's not about being blinded. Anur Majid, we're all Moors. Page 44. This perhaps what Charles Tilly, the expert on nationalism, meant by saying that national revolutionary situations before 1800s resulted overwhelmingly from the state attempts to subordinate, expel, or eradicate imperial minorities. And when the conquering Spaniards began to persecute the conquered Moors, then to persecute those who had been nominally Christianized, the Moriscos. So they're even telling you the sellouts, you're even gonna get it. All the converters to the beast system that want auto-tune in their arm or whatever like that, you're gonna be the first to get it.
Yep.
Just because you sold out. Not because of any other reason. Just because you have no honor.
You told him in the King Alfred plan.
Told him in King Alfred plan. All those people with their, all those high seat people will be unseated at once.
Yep.
Unseated at once. Because it's a fraud. It's purposeful fraud. In order to take you out of your again, with regard to fezzes and Ethiopia. With regard to fez and Ethiopia. This is framing the interpreter towards a visual perspective. Framing the interpreter towards a visual perspective. Bridget Mersman, Birgitmersmann. Page 64. The page of the Abyssinian interpreter, brokering cultural sovereignty. The photograph of Yusuf, the Abyssinian interpreter, shows the interpreter in the field of translation near a village settlement in the Ethiopia grasslands. He is clearly represented as a field worker, a native interpreter. His head covered with a fez protrudes out of the picture as it just surpasses the line of the horizon and is set against the bright sky zone that fills the upper third of the photograph. The light contrast, together with the lifted out position of the head, accentuates the darkness of the interpreter's skin, his racial or ethnic affiliation. Now, if you're telling me about some British museum picture talking about some battle with some Ethiopia or whatever, well, Abyssinia is before Ethiopia. And they're saying Abyssinian had a fez. If he's an Abyssinian interpreter, then he's not Ethiopian. He's Abyssinian. Totally different jurisdiction. Only because of the fraud of Ethiopia. Why Nobujwali told Moors that you're not Ethiopian. Because that's Kush. Everybody knows Kush. Roll it up, light it up. Everybody knows Kush. Stop playing. The Abyssinian interpreter, Yusuf. Just go Google it. The picture will come up. You can see the fez accentuating the horizon and all the stuff like that. It's just a picture. They're going in like that on a picture. And then you know the photographer had to be on some type of height if the picture is going to be taken with the fez just above the horizon. The line of the fez is the line of the horizon. You know what they're about. You know what you're about. If you don't know what you're about, shut the hell up. Stop with your minority thinking. Go somewhere. And stop confusing people. All you do, confusing people. Prevail, the inspiring story of Ethiopia's victory over Mussolini's invasion. He's showing pictures about. Um, 14 years before in Nairobi, British policemen had fired their rifles at point-blank range into thousands of protesters for Kikuyu agitator Harry Thuku, Thuku. Kenyatta's friend and fellow activist, Dina Stock, would recall him half-jestingly, half-seriously, quizzing a distinguished aircraft designer who appeared to be a communist on the most effective way of sabotaging an airplane on the ground with a spear. While he made it sound like a joke, he was genuinely interested in the answer. When he later took a room in Stock's flat up in Camden Town, he painted the furniture in traditional Ethiopian colors. He began wearing a fez and cloak, and he grew his beard as an imitative gesture of support for Haile Selassie. Now, if Ethiopia is warring over their own land with foreigners, and the foreigners have some soldiers wearing fezzes, the people without the fezzes win the war. But then the people who win the war start wearing fezzes? Or were they wearing fezzes all the time? And just go look up Moorish beard and then match that beard to Haile Selassie's beard, and you tell me if people aren't just talking BS to you, trying to get you to abandon your ancestral birthright. Your Moorish lineage. That you are the people who did everything to make this world whatever it is before it got to what it is now. Every single thing. Has the descendants of dark-skinned people. And again, propaganda to get you away from your right. So don't talk any BS about certain people founded certain things. Right? This is a campaign that was around the world to get rid of the Moors. Political Islam in Turkey. Running West, Heading East by G. Jenkins. Mustafa Kemal next turned to the outward trappings of traditional Islam belief, starting with headgear. Despite the conservative opposition when it was first introduced, many devout Muslims now regarded the fez as an Islamic headdress, not least because of its lack of a peak or brim, made it easy for Muslims to press their foreheads to the ground while prostrating themselves during prayer. Although a handful of members of the westernized urban elite had begun wearing European-style hats for the majority of the population, they were inextricably associated with the infidel West, and something no self-respecting Muslim would wear without implicitly insulting his own religion. For Mustafa Kemal, however, the fez was both a symbol of obscurantism and superstition, and a source of national humiliation. It had also been the cause of intense personal embarrassment when, as a young Ottoman officer, street urchins had mocked the fez he wore as part of his military uniform during a port call in Sicily, on the way of a posting in Libya. In summer 1925, Mustafa Kemal decided to outlaw the fez and replace it with European-style hats. 2 years later, when he delivered the new tuck, he declared it was necessary to abolish the fez, which sat on our heads as a sign of ignorance, fanaticism, and hatred to progress and civilization. and to adopt in its place the hat, the customary headdress of the whole civilized world, just showing, among other things, that no difference existed in the manner of thought between the Turkish nation and the whole family of civilized mankind. Outlaw the fez. No, outlaw the fez when we have the traveling more.
Right.
Sheldon L., who has traveled many a places and never had issues with his fez. Always get honors when he has his fez. Right? And remember, all the keywords are in there. Turk, Ottoman, Muslim, Islamic, headdress, European style, hats. Gave up a national headwear. Gave up an Islamic headdress for a European style hat. And then that's how Turkey became corporate and got their quote unquote recognition as showing no difference between the Turkish nation and the whole family of civilized mankind. So remember, you're talking 1925, around the same time of when Noble Drew Ali was reintroducing the fez. Which even gave it more of a defining position. Because what did they ultimately do? Give the birthright back to the Moors during the time of when the Prophet was on the scene. Is it interesting that the Turkish nation in 1925 banned the fez? And then in 1926, Noble Drew Ali is here talking about the Holy Temple of Science and got fezzes on? And have more than the hundreds of thousands in the Americas? After people doubted everything? After people doubted. No way. But yeah, Moors are back. And as we know, there's still people around with their European style mentality. That want to carry on the BS when everyone knows what's up. And it's real, it's just, it can't be happenstance that whoever the individual is an L. Whoever the individual is an L. Alana Samuel. Segregation had to be invented. Segregation had to be invented.
Islam, Grand Sheikh.
It's a lot more.
Real quick, before you go in on that,
yeah,
can I, because you were speaking on the feds, right?
Yeah. Go ahead more. Go ahead.
Right.
I got a book from his name is Jeremy Seal. It's called A Fez of the Heart. Right? Go check. It says hold on. It says again, okay, go ahead. It says from Jeremy Seal, A Fez of the Heart, page 311. It says, I looked away. I can see the Euphrates, the Euphrates.
Yeah.
Okay, the Euphrates, like silver thread, working its way down the valley until it was lost in the distant cobalt colored suggestion of water beckoned up behind Adirak Dam. The 5 stone figures looked west toward Ankara, Istanbul, and Europe. Behind them, in the burial mound at their backs, their eastward-facing counterparts looked toward Iran in the heart of Asia. I looked at them, their faces framed by carved curly locks and battered by frozen winds of almost 2,000 years. I came to notice that their hats, which has gradually dawned on me, where what had been bought me here in the first place. The stone heads on Nimrod Mountain were wearing fezzes. Not all of them. Fortuna was garlanded with vines and fruit. It says Apollo's hat was rather too flattened to be a fez, but the other figures were prototype fez wearers. I checked, and sure enough, there was evidence of tassels at the back of each hat. Here were fezzes in the heart of Turkey, 1,000 years before the dervish sheik was ever invented. In the expense of the past, I now realize I might never find the origin of this hat. At the same time, however, I understood that the pursuit of the fez to its beginnings was no longer the point. All that mattered was what the fez meant. Over the centuries, succeeding generations may have caused the fez to represent whatever best suited them, made it variously masquerade according to the times as the badge of westernization, a symbol of Orthodox Islam or of Ottoman loyalty, even as a poor toy of tourism. But here, on the side of this desolate mountain, among these ancient fez-wearing, its true meaning was revealed. It was the hat that we concealed the desperate heads beneath it, a hat that looked both ways. Ancient history had astonished me. It continues, Antonex may have been a stickler for flashy send-offs. His father may have shaken hands with naked gods, but there was something that his Pekini potentate had understood. He had placated the Eastern and Western culture elements that were at a variance in his society, melding into single unity, gods, beliefs, and the value systems, so that what emerged is neither Eastern nor Western, but both Eastern and Western at once. The Sultan Muhammad II's words upon the introduction of the fez echoed around the ruins. Quote, henceforth I recognize Muslims only in the mosque, Christians only in the church, Jews only in the synagogue. Outside these palaces of worship, I desire every individual to enjoy the same political rights and my favorite and my fatherly protection. This way, the way forward, and neither west nor east prevailing, but with the two worlds instead coexisting and the conflicting ideologies no longer colliding in the wreckage of car bombs and detention, language, laws, and burnt out hotels. This was a book about this guy. He was going on a search for the feds. He went on this whole travel thing about going on a search for the feds. It was pretty, but it was like a modern search. But the thing was, it was like this man went through all types of efforts to find out how important the feds was. You know what I mean? Like, and he would mention at the end, like, it really didn't matter to him, like, where it came from and stuff like that, but how you can see in people's faces how important it was to them. Like how important it was to them at the time. They were seeing the stories behind it. You know, because there was one time he had went to a place where they were the only place that made the feds any longer. And it was just him and his son in it. And he was just telling them stories about how it started, him and his grandfather. And he realized, like that story will always stick with him and stuff like that. He never got the story of the origin of the feds, but just like watching how him and his father was the last two to make the feds in his village and whatever. And, you know, he was witnessing that history. And I was like, yeah, that's all crazy. All of that in the search of the feds. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, this book is crazy.
For real. Yeah, that's crazy. Since Noble Drew Ali brought the feds, just Noble Drew Ali shout out. We are Moors. Anwar Madrid. His assassination, El-Hajj, was a traumatic event that over time had turned him into a sacrificial prophet. For no sooner had Elijah Muhammad died than his son went Orthodox and founded an American Muslim society, leaving Louis Farrakhan to oversee the older order. Both organizations, connected by family and historical ties, were closer to mainstream Islam at this time than had ever been possible under the reign of Elijah Muhammad and Noble Drew Ali before him. Remarkably, as the 20th century wore on, American Islam gradually returned to its Afro-Moorish roots. Remember, he was talking about El-Hajj. There's a direct connection. And all we have to do is accept that fact.
Yeah.
The great and overpowering river of anti-Islamic feelings overflowed the European boundaries and flooded the American lands, wrote Rafael Guevara Bazan. The conquerors were men moving to the New World in order to complete the Catholicity and ecumenicity of the Christian faith, according to medieval theological ideas. But what must be noted here, at least in regard to the clash of Islam and Christendom, that sets the background to the unfolding of modern history, is that Islam worked both against and for the Moorish minority. The religion and culture that made the African, for instance, an outsider, also made him a model, a rebel leader in Brazilian uprisings and the Haitian Revolution, a mutineer on the Amistad, and paradoxically, a cultural slob vis-a-vis the white master. Moorish identity, whether innate or acquired, turned out to be a powerful tool of resistance to the depredations of slavery, racism, and social exclusion.
He said Moorish identity.
Moorish identity, whether innate or acquired, turned out to be a powerful tool of resistance to the depredations of slavery, racism, and social exclusion. Moorish identity. Not black identity, African identity, Egyptian identity, Kemetic identity, Hebrew identity, Israel identity. None of that. Moorish. Moorish identity. And again, same reason why Noble Drew Ali said Moorish. Because there's so many variations of Moors. They're all Moors. They're all chairs, but some are leather, some are wood.
Right. Right. Like the mortal said from the so-called Philippines. That's restricting.
Mm-hmm.
So you try to just make it seem like it just applies to that shade. You restricting because she's a Moor.
Exactly. She's not even trying to go in the black box.
And laughing at you because you call yourself black.
Right. Calling yourself black. So we're talking about Alana Samuel's Segregation Had to Be Invented article. And also keep in mind with the divine warning by Prophet Noble Drew Ali, because this puts that into perspective. Charlotte, North Carolina. Growing up here in the 1940s and 50s, Savon Rhines experienced segregation every day. He couldn't visit the public library near his house, but instead had to travel to the colored library in the historically black area of Brooklyn, a neighborhood that used to be in the center of Charlotte. He attended a school for black children where he received secondhand books and where the school day was half of the length of that of white schools. Because of the black schools had too many children, not enough funds, 60 years later, he says Charlotte is still a segregated city. People who are white want as little to do with black people as they can get away with, he told me. You have anything thus far, more?
No, just go ahead. I was just listening, Gracie.
Okay.
Go for it.
No worries.
Go for it.
This is unfortunately not a surprising account of North Carolina or of the South more generally. The South of the 1950s was the land of fire hoses aimed at black people who dared to protest Jim Crow laws. Today, schools in the South are almost,
Say that line one more time.
The South of the 1950s was the land of fire hoses aimed at black people who dared protest Jim Crow laws.
Okay, so we're talking about 1950s right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to get a time frame.
Today's schools, go ahead.
Because you know, they got rid of the prophet in 1929.
Yeah.
You know, and we wanted, because in my mind, when I'm hearing these dates, I'm like, okay, I'm not hearing this around when the prophet was around.
Yeah, the way they're talking about certain.
The way they're talking about it.
Yeah.
Like, they're making it seem like, okay, he's gone, we're going on a parade now. Let's go get him. Yeah. You know, now we're water hosing them down. I'm like, okay. But,
Yeah.
but the article keeps going. It exposes a lot. So I'm gonna throw that part in there.
Islam. Today's schools in the South are almost as segregated as they were when Sivan Rhymes was a child. Southern cities, including Charlotte, are facing racial tensions over the shootings of black men by white policemen, which in Charlotte's case led to massive protests and riots. But what few people know is that the South wasn't always so segregated. During a brief window of time between the end of the Civil War and the turn of the 20th century, black and white people lived next to each other in southern cities, creating what historian Tom Hanchett describes as a salt and pepper pattern. They were not integrated in a meaningful sense. Divisions existed, but in a lot of southern cities, segregation hadn't been fully imposed. There were neighbors where blacks and whites were living nearby, said Eric Fauner, a Colombian historian and expert on the Reconstruction. That's all the people who think that we're just talking some BS when we say Reconstruction of history. Eric Fauner, Foner. Walk around in the Atlanta or the Charlotte of the late 1800s, and you might see black people in restaurants, hotels, and theater, Fauner said. 2 decades later, such things were not allowed. Go ahead, Mark.
Because you're saying, earlier it said the Civil War, around the time of the Civil War, we're talking about 1865. And you just said, too, the late 1800s, so yeah, 1865. You know what I mean? Like, he said they was living together looking like salt and pepper.
Yep. Salt and pepper pattern. And that also brings back Brother Jose Pimenta Bay again with his uncle that he talked about. He used to tell him the story about going into the restaurants while certain people weren't allowed to go in, but he could go in because he knew who he was. He knew himself.
Yep.
No, and that was 60s, I think he was saying. As Hanchett, the author of Sorting the New South City, Race, Class, and Urban Development in Charlotte, puts it, segregation had to be invented. This amorphous period of race relations in the South was first described by the historian C. Van Woodward, who wrote in his 1955 book, The Strange Career of Jim Crow, that segregation in the South did not become rigid with the end of slavery, but instead around the turn of the century.
This is crazy, man. He just said segregation had to be invented. Like, this was a plan. They planned this.
Had to be invented. Oh. They planned this. They planned this. They planned this. Just more got to get off the line.
Oh, just knocking you off. That's crazy. I was talking and everything.
Yeah, you said
I didn't even know I was off. I was just talking.
After you said segregation. After you said they planned this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, when they just planned it, they make it seem like, you know, it's always been so-called racism. They never got along. So-called blacks and whites never got along. they always been at each other's necks, or they was the so-called black man was suppressed by the so-called white man. Like, they always been enslaved by them. You know, like, nope, it wasn't like that. Until years later, they planned it to be like that. Because what happened was we ran into the article. I was listening to a video, and I heard this European say, I'm quoting him, he said, the blacks and the whites got along in the South just fine in the 40s. I said, what? In the 40s? And I'm like, how can that be possible? Then I went to go do some research. And then, yeah, it was all fine up until the 40s. Like, up until the 40s, from the Civil War, 1865, around that time, up until the 40s. So through Noble Drew Ali, when he was around and stuff like that, it was all fine. Even the European. So he's the one that sparked my interest of it to make me go look it up. And then I was like, wait a minute. And then, yep, they was living together. They got records of them living together and stuff like that. Moors having businesses and stuff like that. All of that. It's just, everything was already set up. And then we already know. Well, when she can keep going in, but you can see the timeline. Once you see the timeline around the 30s, in the 40s, when people started on our side selling out, took 120,000 members and made them black. That was in 1930.
Yeah. Which they need in order to go ahead with the segregation myth.
Exactly.
They need the black and the white people.
There you go.
They can't have Moors playing race game. And then also too, I was checking in the blacks line, segregation is not even in here. That's how much of a fraud it is. That's how much of a fraud it is. It's not even in the dictionary. So they're letting you know. During that time.
Hold on 1 second, Green Sheet.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna take this call. One second.
Segregation did not become rigid. There occurred an era of experiment and variety in race relations of the South, in which segregation was not the invariable rule. During that time, Funner said black residents could sue companies for discriminating against them and win their lawsuits. Blacks could also legally vote in most parts. Disenfranchisement laws did not arrive in earnest until about 1900 and were often allied with poor whites in the voting booth. Now that goes right along with King Alfred Plan again. But like King Alfred Plan, it's not limiting the interaction between Moors and poor Europeans only. These people are saying everybody was, there was even no laws. There was no codes to say, hey, black guy, you can't sue. So people had to be free during this time. People had to be free during this time. This alliance was strong enough to control states like North Carolina, Alabama, and Virginia at various points throughout the late 19th century. This alliance was doomed. White elites, cast out of power and facing policies that threatened their economic hold on the state, launched a campaign that they knew would drive blacks and whites apart. They called it a campaign of white supremacy. and sought to unite whites of all economic backgrounds in hatred of black people. It was this campaign that tried to reinforce the idea of black people as different, as lesser, and as a race that had to be separate from whites. Segregation was created in the South during this period, and many of the ideas that drove it still exist more than a century later in the South of today.
Shalom, Grand Chief.
Yeah, more.
I'm gonna have to yield for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to call right back.
No worries. Do your thing, more.
Yeah.
All
You
right.
get me? It's long.
No, it's all good. It's long. So the people who right now can say shut down and whatever, were threatened and had to put something in place in order to have quote unquote white unity in a time when they were realizing that this stuff's almost, you're gonna lose this. Because the true way out, like Noble Drew Ali taught, is love. Love for humanity. That you see each other as brothers and sisters, and you know what I mean? Yeah, we from different stocks. We're from different backgrounds. We're from different genders. But that doesn't mean that it could be separate, especially if we're on the same mind frame. This is why in the oral statements you have prophecies of Noble Drew Ali directly related to Europeans. And majority of them are not from some, black guy perspective of Europeans. Don't look at just what we've researched or been told. Expand your mind a little bit and think beyond that in certain directions with certain subject matter. And again, it's all for you to see how on point Noble Drew Ali was. More was on point. College Street runs through the heart of Charlotte's downtown, passing by skyscrapers like the Bank of America Corporate Center, fancy hotels like the Hilton, and the concrete and glass of Charlotte Convention Center. The street has grown quite a bit since the 1870s, when it was comprised of small homes and businesses right on top of each other, according to Hanchett, who went through city rolls which list residence, occupations, race, and address. Neighbors were not divided by class. Business owners lived next door to workers, or by race. Blacks and whites lived on the same block you found. On the College Street of 1877, for example, the black renter Ben Smith lived next to white bookkeeper Thomas Tiddy and white cotton merchant M.H. McGill. More than a decade after the Civil War, Charlotte had no hard-edged black neighborhoods, Hanchett writes in his book. Rather, African Americans continued to live all over the city, usually side by side with whites. Again, eat the fish, spit out the bones. This is right in line with Noble Drew Ali in the Divine Warning. because he always made the reference of traveling. Right? Um, Now, as far as this interaction, again, if you go back to the oral statements and you read some of the statements with regard to Europeans, when he's talking about foreign sympathizers, he's talking about Europeans. They were also supporting this because everybody, again, understands the connection that the Moors have to this jurisdiction. Through your free national name, you are known and recognized by all nations of the earth that are recognized by the said national government in which they live. The 14th and 15th Amendments brought the North and South in unit, placing the Southerners who were at that time without power with the constitutional body of power. The free national constitutional law that was enforced since 1774 declared all men equal and free. And if all men be declared by the free national constitution to be free and equal, since that constitution has never been changed, there is no need for the application of the 14th and 15th Amendments for the salvation of our people. So I, the prophet, am hereby calling aloud with a divine plea to all true American citizens to help me to remove this great sin which has been committed and is being practiced by my people in the United States of America, because they know it is not the true and divine way. And without understanding, they have fallen from the true light into the utter darkness of sin. And there is not a nation on earth today that would recognize them, not us, them, because they don't want to be who their ancient foremothers and forefathers were. And because they don't want to be who their ancient foremothers and forefathers were, they've fallen from the true light into the utter darkness of sin. Look at their conditions today. Now we're looking at Moorish children, because we know they're straight. No, they're learning something about who they are. There is no nation on earth today that will recognize them socially, religiously, politically, or economically, etc., in their present condition of endeavorment in which they themselves try to force upon a civilized world. They will not refrain from their sinful ways of action, and their deeds have brought Jim Crowism, segregation, and everything that brings harm to human beings on earth. They will not refrain from their sinful ways of action, and their sinful ways and deeds have brought Jim Crowism, segregation, letting you know what? That segregation had to be made up. Just like the article saying. Now, if Noble Drew Ali's telling you that segregation was made up since the 1900s, if he's telling you early in the 1900s, he's telling you Jim Crowism and segregation is a fraud, because these people started wanting to be not themselves. They're around Europeans and they're looking at Europeans as some god or whatever and not recognizing that that's them. In fact, Hanchett says it wasn't immediately clear after the Civil War that race would necessarily be the biggest dividing line in America. The America of the late 19th century was, after all, a country in which social class and family history still played a big role in people's fates. As the Charlotte Chronicle, a newspaper predominantly for white readers, wrote in 1887, wealth and position erected barriers more despotic, if anything, than those based on prejudice of color. In 1890, an economic depression spread throughout the country, and white and black farmers and factory workers shared the belief that the pro-industry policies of the Democrats, usually elites who held land or owned businesses, weren't serving them well. Black and white farmers were forced into sharecropping, which kept them mired in poverty. White workers in nascent factories were subject to terrible working conditions for low wages. In 1894, black Republicans and white populists joined together to create a fusion ticket of candidates to oppose Democrats. They shocked the political establishment and won 2/3 of the legislature. This wasn't the first time whites and blacks had allied politically. In Virginia, in the late 1870s, blacks and poor whites voters formed the Register Party, which worked together to overcome the power of white political elites. In Northern Carolina, they also worked together to write the Constitution of 1868, which mandated the creation and funding of a state system of public education. These are all the things that, when everybody realizes who the real enemy is, they start being selfish. They stop being selfish. And they start thinking about the whole. The picture gets broader, which is what it's supposed to do. Now think about all the lies that they've been told. Blacks help write North Carolina's Constitution? If they work together to help write the Constitution for that state, Asiatics and Europeans, that means that somebody was following the peace treaty. That means there were actually people who knew that the only way this is going to work is through the supreme law of the land being enforced on all people. Which again, why you could see why, you know, it's always about the stronghold of the Moors that they have to take down in order for them to do their madness. We saw it in Spain, we saw it in Americas with Nova Druali. That it was the last stronghold for the Moors in America. The Moorish Science Temple of America. The greatness of Druali is that there were many different jurisdictions. So the ones that they could have got their hands on that were in the name Moorish Science Temple of America. So once they got certain things, then they can act. Now remember, these are the same people who are supposed to be the white supremacy, whatever. Remember, this is the South we're talking about. So these are supposed to be the people who are doing the burn guys and lynch guys and all this. Now again, they will not refrain from their sinful ways of action, and their deeds have brought Jim Crowism, segregation, and everything that brings harm to human beings on earth. And they fought the Southerner for all these great misuses. But I have traveled in the South. He traveled. Traveled. I think I read a motorcade around the same time. So I thought he traveled. But I have traveled in the South, and I have examined conditions there. And it is the works of my people continuously practicing the things which brings dishonor, disgrace, and disrespect to any nation that lives the life. The Fusion Party proved to be more powerful than anyone had anticipated. In 1896, it gained even more seats and elected a Republican as governor of North Carolina after decades of Democratic rule. Fusion was a ticket of the working class, and the alliance soon began implementing policies that helped its supporters. They capped interest rates, increased public school funding, allowed symbols to be put on ballots to enfranchise people who could not read or write. Their policies were designed, in the words of one supporter, to protect the liberty of the laboring people, both black and white. The white elites were threatened by these new policies, especially because Fusion had shifted the burden of taxation from individuals to corporations and railroads. Once again, the elite were threatened by the policies, especially the taxation policies, because the taxation policies were taken off of the individuals and put them on the corporations, is who the tax belongs to. If these people could get in power and cap interest rates and increase public school funding and all the stuff that people are complaining about right now, obviously they had something going on then. But again, the fact remains that these people weren't white people and black people. Because blacks nor whites have the right to talk. They must remain mute. Yet they had little connection with poor voters, and so had few ideas about how to address their economic concerns. Instead, they tried to convince poor whites that they should not associate with blacks in any way. Democrats began to talk of black as an other, warning of the dangers of miscegenation, portraying blacks as rapists who would come after white women. Stand The newspaper cartoon from 1898 warns of Negro rule. Just gonna get that up 1 sec, Morris. You know what they're doing, man. I'm still falling for the BS. People know what they're doing. Negro rule. Democratic-controlled newspapers published cartoons about the horror of Negro rule that had emerged from a fusion ballot box and stepped up coverage of black crime. So all the black crime stuff is part of the fake segregation thing that was created when, after Noble Drew Ali passed in the 1930s, they started playing this black and white thing, and then there's white people that are superior and playing their little game, using their little newspapers to make it look very bad on the dark-skinned people. The Anglo-Saxon must rule, an editorial from the Charlotte Observer argued. A rising Democrat, Charles Aycock, gave speeches across the state urging Democrats to unite the white people against the Negroes, an inferior race. To ensure that they'd win the election of 1898, Democrats also resorted to physical intimidation. Their paramilitary arm, the Red Shirts, marched on black communities across North Carolina, disrupting black church services and Republican meetings. The places they couldn't win, they seized by violence. When the Red Shirts found out the fusion ticket had won in Wilmington, North Carolina in the election of 1898, a mob marched on town, killing black residents and forcing the mayor, board of aldermen, police chief to resign at gunpoint. It was the only successful coup in American history. Statewide, the white supremacy campaign was effective. In 1898, Democrats won 52% of the vote in North Carolina and ousted many fusionists from office. Fusion downed the state Democratic whites rule, the Charlotte Observer blared after the election. Back in power, Democrats were determined to never lose power again. There were two ways of ensuring this, according to Lilotis: making sure blacks could no longer vote, and making poor whites feel superior to and animosity toward black voters. And again, going back to this thing with Noble Drew Ali, and at the polls and voting in the 1900s. And then bringing people into office. Them actually getting people into office as Moors, using their power, their national power, to get someone in office who's going to work on behalf of them. In 1899, in the 1899 legislative session, Democrats wrote an amendment to the state constitution that required that anyone who wanted to vote demonstrate to local elected officials that they could read, write any section of the Constitution. Voters ratified it in 1900s, disenfranchising the state's black voters for decades. Between 1890 and 1908, every state in the South adopted new state constitutions that sought to disenfranchise black voters. Democrats resigned in North Carolina. Democrats reigned in North Carolina and in the South for the next 60 years. But I have traveled in the South and have examined the conditions there. And it is the works of my people continuously practicing the things which brings dishonor, disgrace, and disrespect to any nation that lives the life. You have to honor your foremothers and forefathers. You can't abandon them and expect some salvation, because everybody's about theirs. See how these Europeans are about theirs? Now they go out there and they put Negroes down so they don't vote. They're the majority. If all of them go vote, we lose. So let's make one a martyr and stop everybody from voting. Let's make two, just to be sure. Just to scare them just enough. All that white supremacy BS. Created stuff. Created. An illusion. Created. In order for there to be no unity. In order for there to be no love. Which, of course, would mean no Noble Drew Ali. Because if they knew about him, they would put their mind where their heart is. And stop playing around. The Democratic Party fought back and said, look, the only way to stop this kind of thing is to take the vote away from black people. The elite then set about normalizing imagined racial hierarchies according to Leloudis, Leloudis. It was in 1899 that North Carolina passed its first Jim Crow law, requiring separate seating for blacks and whites on all trains and steamboats. Yes, this wasn't something that was ancient. They just started doing this because our people didn't want to be themselves. And now you see why it was so easy for Noble Drew Ali to get people. Because they just started the Jim Crow BS. He saw that be implemented. He saw, just like how we saw the Towers get the Disappearing Act, and it's something that happened in history for our generations. Okay, his generations, they saw Jim Crow come in. That, yeah, we got nigger laws now for you people. We got black laws that we're going to use against you. Forget constitutional rights. We are creating laws so we can keep you under our boot heel. So him being able to see this, him being able to see this, knowing that, yo, they just started that yesterday. Look how far we are from They created that stuff. We're actually thinking that, oh yeah, Jim Crow and all that stuff was some stuff created by some Europeans, and they've been doing this for us, and then they keep doing that. That's a fiction. We were living together with Europeans when we quote unquote got out of slavery. Because that was just a few people. Everybody else was chilling. Black salt and pepper effect. Salt and pepper effect. New regulations in Charlotte in 1899 required that blacks and whites be seated separately in courtrooms and that separate Bibles be provided. In 1905, when Charlotte opened its first city-owned recreation ground, the local government passed a law stipulating that black people were not allowed inside. In 1907, North Carolina passed a law requiring segregation seating in all inner urban trolleys on the state. Right? So again, goes back to that thing with Noble Drew Ali, that it was the conditions of my people not having their own trains and steamboats, not having their own court, not having their own local government is why they got the BS that they got. Because they're not black people. They're the Aboriginal indigenous people dug in the ground, pull up some Egyptian stuff. Like, what do you mean? We're not home in Africa. The hell are you talking about? Jim Crow laws were a way of encouraging whites to see people of color as outcasts and pariahs. Lilodis told me there were a direct reaction to the short-lived political alliance between some blacks and whites. As whites were more and more encouraged to see blacks as the other, they increasingly lived in separate places too. In 1876, for example, African Americans were scattered throughout the First Ward, the center of downtown in Charlotte. Only 3 blocks of the ward were all black, according to Hanchett. By 1899, Charlotte's first ward blocks were mostly all black or all white, although those black and white blocks alternated and were close to one another. But between 1889 and 1910, segregation was accelerated. What Hatchett calls micro-segregation gave way to patterns of sizable black and white clusters. Hatchett writes, in a topsy-turvy world, it might well be wise to put some physical distance between one's own group and one's others who could seem so strange. During the late 1880s and late 1920s, Charlotte leaders set to work to recreate their town in a modern urban image, abandoning old-fashioned salt and pepper intermingling in favor of a city sorted out into a patchwork kilt of separate neighborhoods of blue-collar whites for blacks and for the better cases. Charlotte today is an extremely segregated city. Whites largely live in a triangle in the city's south between South Boulevard and Providence Road, where neighbors are between 80 and 95% white. Drive down our street, just about everyone's white, Jim Carr said, a white resident of that triangle told me. Blacks in the city's growing Latino community live everywhere else. Census tracts in the north and west parts say that 70% black or more, and 43 and 51 tracts, 70% or more Hispanic and high poverty, according to 2014. Right, so we see that it's a myth, a created illusion to try to get people to look at it like We don't know that everybody's trying to be us. We do not know that everyone is trying to be us. We don't know true history. Brother Sheldon is doing some studying, and he was talking about when the Rockstone Ball Out book. When the Rockstone Ball Out book by Horace Butler. So it is talking about the Hebrews after they killed all the Amorites on the north side of the Amazon River. They made their way across the Atlantic onto West Alkebulan, and the Moabites were chilling on the south side of the Amazon River in Moab. So here is something to think about. If the African kings from certain tribes conspired against us with Europeans to enslave us and send us back to the Americas, and they keep telling us we are not African, they were not lying. And they were just telling us to get off their front lawn and go home. Because we here, we're here. You don't need to play. You just need to accept it. We're here. I want to say Islam to all the Moors. Peace and love to all the Moors. And again, more studying. Make sure you go check lesson book 14. CMB certificate number AA222141. Moorish Americans who have become conscious of the true history and hidden science culture in the Americas, Al-Marak, will usually become civically active and pursue their Moorish science and birthrights. For those who do, this information is a key to bringing all parties to the law of the land, constitutions and treaty, with proper jurisdiction and proper venue. Moors, initiates, and doctors of law, review these facts. 3 copyright certificates by CMB. 1. Certificate registration number AA77869. March 23, 1948, corresponding to Moorish calendar year 1368. Copyright owner CMB, Clock of Destiny, March 25, 1948, Moorish calendar year 1368. 2. Certificate registration number AA209316. March 31st, 1952, 1372 Moorish calendar. Masonry, Astrology, and History and Geography, Clock of Destiny 2, a revised edition of a previously published book, Clock of Destiny 1. 3. Certificate registration number AA222141, September 8th, 1952, 1372 Moorish calendar. Clock of Destiny, Moorish American Nationality Card of Identification with Zodiac Constitution. This certificate, AA222141, is the focus of this civic examination, for it is without doubt affirming the relationship, proper venue at law, between the Moors and the Franks and other foreign Christian nations. United States Code of Laws of a general and permanent character. Title 22, Chapter 2, Consular Courts, General Information. 1. Consul, a wazir, officer, consul, or minister, representative of a nation who is appointed or assigned the duty of the overseer of the nation's relationship with another nation concerning the citizens, mercantile, economics, etc. The consul or consuls generally report to a higher wazir who is called a consul general. the descendants of Moroccans born in America should refer to the Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1787 between Morocco and the United States of America. Remember, the European Christians are foreigners settled in your land. This is your home. Consular courts generally deal with civil cases and in some circumstances have criminal jurisdiction. Consular courts are held by consuls of one nation/country in the territory or jurisdiction of another nation or territory. Consular courts are held by consuls of one nation in the territory or jurisdiction of another. The courts are operated under the authority of treaties which are constitutionally enforced. All parties must be lawfully identified with documented proof of nationality and citizenship and documented proof of sovereign authority to enforce the law of the people. Do not go beyond this paragraph if you do not understand it. This is your key. Consular courts are held by consuls of one nation and country in the territory or jurisdiction of another. So if this is our home, then we're not in somebody else's jurisdiction. And if we're not in somebody else's jurisdiction, then consular courts are to be held by people who are not of the territory of jurisdiction of us, not by us. Even if you put Moorish on it, it's still not ours. Which is why you get a CNN anchorman, which is a European corporation, to be a consular general. Because foreign jurisdiction. Peace and love to all Moors. I want to say Islam to all the students of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Peace and love to all the Moors, everywhere you're at. Give thanks for the support today. Islam to the 66 Moors that were in there. Don't forget to get the thumbs up to 66. We'll just close out with our prayer. 5 on the left, 2 on the right. Allah, the Father of the universe, Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Peace and love, Moors. Islam to all. Don't forget, you can make time to go within. Try your best to make time to go within. Do the best you can do. Peace and love to all Moors worldwide. We'll be back again on Tuesday, 7 p.m. Unless something happens between now and then. You already know how it goes. Islam, Moors. Peace and love.
And conscious means that you're conscious of what's going on in this world. You're fully aware and awake to what's going on in the world. That's what conscious rap means. So if you got conscious rap, that means you got unconscious rap. That means you got motherfuckers that's unconscious rapping. That means they sleeping. They still under the spell of Leviathan. They still under the spell of Kingdom.
Call me brother man, I'm not the rubber man. Though I keep my Nazis in affairs wrapped with some rubber bands. Burning out the Ku Klux Klan and with the Grand Dairy Queen misters. Just butts of guns I'm giving, trying to make more sovereign citizens. These minions help kill your prophet, stole your treasury millions. You heard it from your brother man, now the smothers sell out. Cess links and K2 Kush days keep me red out. I got the knowledge to make these silly hoes question the pimping directors of music videos. Gaylords and persons with strap-on boots with heels. Too much graphic art faces, boobs are not real. Since MCM and Troop, they use Timberland boots to get us all caught up in fashion, not the simple men roots. Got our people on dogmatic, not metaphysic. Exoteric, not esoteric is how you missed it. So out of it, you couldn't feel the natural mystic blowing through the air like it didn't give a shit. I hear the dirty Moors dissing, cause I said profanities. A lot of these grand sheets need to take off the panties. Pull the thong out your crack vest wearing sash ass nigga. Return to where the prophet found you, Negro, it's that nigga.
It's time to choose a side. You either positive or you negative. You either evil or you good. You understand what I'm saying? Choose a side, nigga. I know what side I'm on.
I throw a Molotov at the priest that works for the beast. All they want is our people to rest in peace. No attention of allowing more stress to ease. Cracker won't go home to spread himself the disease. Genocidal epidemic kill us in high proportions. Instead of mummified, we stay boxed in coffins. Mayors attend funerals for PR purposes. Where's the police escort? He replied with nervousness. He said, I don't have those numbers or connections to have Metro Police lead your friend's funeral procession. That's coming from Mr. Mayor, black community player, no question in the hood, dropping off boxes of weapons. Then blame black on black crime or natural causes. Plus those doctors are not on point but off a bit. Natural mystics prove they're not holistic. Hypocrite oaths make your children autistic.
I'm at the point now where I'm saying I'm tired of mixing the medicine with the food. I'm tired of playing that game. Now I'm shoving straight medicine down your fucking throat, nigga. You know what I'm saying? Straight doses of medicine and getting shoved down your throat. I don't give a fuck if it turns you off or not. Because if it do turn you off, then you're a stupid, ignorant motherfucker. You know what I'm saying?
Don't judge like a cover of your favorite book. Visit you in your dreams, hand with the hook. Paralysis overtook, so shook. Stop, look, listen with precision. MC on a mission, vision. Past senses and endless. Cypher with active mods, beat you with facts senseless. Have your mind defenseless when the truth enters. Eyes glow, reminds me of Omar Bay, Algonquin embers. Tap your pioneer out, what's a man remembers. All the lies told to your mind dismembered. Circle broken into quadrants, either 7 in the center, compass G between the square. Baphomet of Templars, warlock, call on my witch mothers to maim them. The same wise spirits burned at stakes in Salem. Torture with vagina pair, survive, bobbing for apples. Contort thumb slide, wrist out, tight shackles.
I always got something deep to say. Every time around. I always got something deep to say. Every time around. I always got something deep to say. Every time around. I always got something deep to say. Every time around.
Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real but they too fake. Most act minor but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real but they too fake. Most act minor but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. Welcome to Scarborough. Youths want cash without tango. Candle magic got me calling on Shango. When I strike, I'm coming from lightning angles, wet up in your ride like dangles. Know your place. When me and the God step into place, devils got step in their face. No matter your race, watch your speech. We defend peace with justice. Love for the God make you shit like mustard or run like custard. Too slow, so you know how it go. Send him to Assad. I'm not the one to judge you, bro, or judge you, sis. Humanity written from hip to hip, but you're shaking them and not getting your womb equipped. Degrading yourself for women's rights, not saving yourself. Turning a dyke, but won't spiritually raise yourself. Waste of sperm, can't even wait to perm. Getting viruses and symptoms, you're thinking it's germs. Making so many mistakes, from none you learn. Seeing your future as the fucking cauldron turn. Ease the burn of your young son's death. Blaming the influence, but never blaming yourself. Drive a shot, but never a crooked cop. Crip shot, but never a racist cop. Racism doesn't exist, so stop. Rex 84, King Alfred got him on the block for chopping. Nigga mortus, abuse ain't stopping. Guns on your shirts, but your pistol's not cocking. Popping and locking, guns jammed for 10 you're locked in. Or eternal sleep in a closed coffin. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real, but they too fake. Most act minor, but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real, but they too fake. Most act minor, but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. They got you stuck on some fakeness. We revealed this, you heard of us. Official lower self-murderers. These Moors come equipped for warfare. Tam or Kufi. These Sufi are my corp of Mufti. For all those who wanna profile and pose. See a nigga dressing or a fag made his clothes. You all alone in that gear, cousin. Gangsta hardcore thugs, you just frontin'. Cops keep them fake crews running like they supposed to. Rich like Scarface, you never come close to. I can see it, eyes tell no lies. Assalamu alaikum, selling white sugar in those bean pies. Giving dollars to Doc's lawyer who took the bar. And between you and your leader, he's being a bar. Some say I'm rude, blame Brother Dawood or Azariah. Pastor Beverly, the Messiah. David Walker, action not a talker. Sleepwalker, wake up, you're just daydreaming. Dirty Moors don't want to be God and stay heathen. I can't believe what I'm seeing. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real, but they too fake. Most act minor, but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. Most don't learn till it's too late. Most say that they real, but they too fake. Most act minor, but think they too great. Most meet fake just cause they too bait. Rappers think they hot, niggas warm like Luke. Oops, call them dirty Moors is what we taught to do. Not the Klansmen burning some cross for you. If he's got a speechwriter, who's the boss to you? Voting for Obama, I see he's off like you. I walk, don't need a boxed up Porsche like you. Loving the Fiat, dirty Moors thugging for Fiat. Grabbing old ladies' purses, they mugging for Fiat. Some taking, some bait. For Fiat they drugging. Fiat is backed by nothing, fam, I'm not bluffing. Players hands on their ass like it's turkey they stuffing. Doing it for your boys, treat your girl like nothing. Matriarch rules, patriarch fools. I'm seeing gods act like men, thinking like mules. Square my rough edges without mason tools. I never took an oath, so I'm revealing mason rules.
You sat down and you attacked the master teacher because you thought you heard something that you didn't hear. That's the first violation. You don't come in. First of all, you come in and you act like you come in peace, but you don't. You got an agenda.
Moors are men upright, independent and fearless. Dogmatized, dirty Moors, punks cut out left earless, cause they never listen. Dirty Moors, keep up your slander. Wu-Tang torture in your ass, hot hangers. Kidnappers, dirty Moor, torture him like Saw. 3D, 0.5 or 1 through 4. Or get it like 5 or 6 with a fez on jigsaw. Leather face in a turban, rip dirty Moors lips off. Disrespecting the mother Raz Mariah Bay. Wrap him up like double crochet, the barbed wire way. Throw him off a bridge or feed him to the piranhas. Yellow journalists Moors spread nothing but propaganda. Idi Amin Bay, treat the temple like Uganda. Dirty Moors like foreigners, crush the dust like ganja. Not worthy of being Moors, we call them dirty Nehesus. Solomon Seal spell command 72 demons to get you.
This is what the temple guys actually said. That Canaan land is not a part of North America. Canaanland is bigger. Yo, it's ignorant, man. I mean, come on, you talking about the same land, man. Canaanland is actually bigger than the landmass they know as the corporate United States. Almost twice as big. And if they had any sense, they could just go to Google and they can type in North America and find out North America goes all the way up to Green. But they're ignorant. They don't want to do that. They just dealing off emotions.
You might hear hoarse voices, see frog faces, and hoops of feet. Demons we run with spitfire with gold wolf teeth. Keep playing. Forget back teeth. New Moors are an issue. Get Ginsu. Maybe a dream visit from Ishnu. A nightmare to never end and always continue. Cold as an igloo. Dealing with my trust issues through vigilance. Active Moors are militants. SPLC dirty Moors call that sovereign citizen. Lying for views. They notice all the MCQs. Benz need gas and fixing, but not enough dues. Pigpen Bays sell you out for peanuts, claiming that we nuts for teaching birthright street level, keeping it beating us.
To any members of the MSTA that's out there listening to what I'm saying, please get it through your head. I don't have a problem with the MSTA. I got issues with
Kendrick Lamar, stay surrounded by feathers. Dirty's guilty of fraud and duly scrutinize their ledgers. Getting proclamations from Morocco, disrespect us. Corporate city only recognize people's court jesters. Handing their back, Moorish puppets and minions. Never get the human rights recognition like Moors near Virginia. Commonwealth, for active Moors knowledge, the Commonwealth. Dirty's claim more, but really on the straw man help. Authenticating a birth certificate, that's not significant. Civil little more two status syndicates. In more face, watch them two more status Indians claiming Turtle Island are lying so intricate.
long days and long nights. But this message needed to be heard.